Greetings, Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University. My students have asked unto me this week, how do we get students to write? How do we motivate them? What do we do if students just don't want to write? A common dilemma. So I'm going to throw some ideas out there, maybe to get you thinking differently. But to be a human being is to have ideas. Yes, they're in there. So it's just a matter of how do you get those ideas from in there out into the world? Because if you're a human being, you have this innate desire to share your ideas with others. Writing is sharing ideas. So why is it that some students have trouble finding topics to write about? Because they have ideas in there. And why do some students not want to write? To not want to write and share is not a natural human condition. So let's take a look at that, shall we? Let's take a look at motivation. All right, team, let's go out there and really fail like we've never failed before. Think about that. Nobody wants to fail or to do poorly. Everyone wants to do well. Value expectancy theory says that value times expectation equals motivation. If you value the activity and you expect to be successful, you are motivated. If you value the activity and don't expect to succeed, you won't be motivated. Or if you don't value the activity, even though you expect to succeed, you won't be motivated. Value expectancy motivation. That helps us understand about writing a little bit. If writing is an experience in failure or inadequacy, of course, students aren't going to be hopping up and down ready to write every day. Oh boy, I get to fail and show what a bad writer I am. If writing for students is always responding to a teacher prompt or idea, of course they won't know how to find their own writing topics. They haven't had practice. If students are always asked to write about stuff of which they have no interest, of course they won't want to write. And think about it in our adult lives. When we have to write something we don't want to write about, how hard that is to get ideas on the page. If students are always told how ideas must be expressed, if the focus is on form, of course they'll have little motivation to write. Now, this does not mean there aren't places to work on form, but we're teaching students how to write, and there's 5 parts to writing. But part of it is to get those ideas out first. Then we can work on shaping the ideas and putting them into various forms. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of motivation, it's not a hierarchy of needs. His was a theory of motivation. What motivates people? And as the motivation to address deficit decreases, the motivation to address growth needs increases. Meaning that these are cognitive needs, the need to understand, the need to express yourselves, self-actualization, understanding yourself and your full potential. These are all things that occur during the writing process. But oftentimes students are motivated by esteem needs. They don't want to look stupid, or they don't want to be rejected by their peers, or psychological safety. So of course they're not going to be motivated to be up here when they're still down there. By the way, in your classrooms, when you see a student misbehaving, instead of just looking at the behavior, always think, what is the motivation behind that behavior? Are they trying to address a deficiency need here or a growth need? So, motivating students to write. I will tell you this. External rewards have little persistence. Whether you're giving a mouse a pellet or a student a happy sticker or a book at club, that as soon as a reward disappears, the motivation disappears. And one goal is to try to link the reward to a literacy-related thing. However, internal reinforcers have greater persistence. Writing and sharing is and should be rewarding in and of itself. So the question is not how do you motivate students to write and share, because that's a natural inclination, but how do you create the conditions where writing and sharing is motivating? How do you create those natural conditions? And let me give you some ideas here. Now, in the educational world, time operates a little bit differently. Think about 180 days, average school days, 7 hours a day. That would be 1,260 hours in a year. If you had 90 days for literacy, you would have 270 hours. If you had 60 minutes a day for writing, that would be 5 hours a week, 180 hours a year. And I would love if there were 60 minutes set aside for writing, but I doubt that's the case. 30 minutes a day would be lovely. That would be 2.5 hours a week for writing. That would be the absolute minimum. That would be 90 hours a year spent in writing and writing practice. Now, as you think of that spread over 180 days, think of the kinds of things that are done in those 90 hours. And how many of those things promotes self-efficacy, I can do it, or a love of writing, I want to do it, this is enjoyable. Think about value expectancy theory again. Time operates differently. There is allocated time, that's the time allocated for instruction. Off-task time, students doing things unrelated to the lesson purpose or objective. And of course, there is some of that, when you transition between this and that, you expect there should be some off-task time. Students shouldn't be sitting paying attention to you all the time. You need those pause and process times. There is time on task when students are actively engaged in learning activities. That is a physical behavior where you see them doing something, and that's kind of good. But academic engagement time is the best. That's when you find that zone of proximal development just above their independent level where they can complete the task with a little bit of scaffolding. They're cognitively engaged and engaged in the activity within their zone of proximal development. That is good. But the best of all possible types of time in a classroom is what's called flow state time, where the students are completely absorbed and focused. And in flow state time, you don't have to manage behavior. You don't have to have rewards or punishments or manipulate and control. Let me explain. Abraham Maslow called this peak experience. Csikszentmihalyi calls this the flow state, where you're in this experience, in this state, and athletes and artists experience it, where time becomes distorted, where you're fully engaged at your peak capacities. That happens, flow state time, where children can be absorbed for a very long time if they're engaged in looking at a caliper or playing or do something that they want to do. The teacher disappears when this happens in flow state time in the classroom. But with a skills-based approach to writing, flow state time never happens. Still, children don't find that state of enjoyment, of total absorption. And yes, I have seen that in the classroom. It can happen in flow state time. Absolutely. But following the program, curriculum, scope, or sequence with fidelity, one size fits all, kills the flow state. One size fits only a very few. And magic teachers don't follow programs with fidelity. They follow students, their students, with fidelity. That is the magic, the ultimate teacher. So, go into a skills-based classroom that has a skills based approach to teaching writing uses a lot of direct instruction to teach specific writing skills in a specific order, grammar, punctuation. And I'll ask you, where is the joy? How much joy do you see taking place there? And what kind of time do you see in that classroom? Off-task time, time on task, academic engagement time, and flow state time. How much flow state time do you see occurring in that direct instruction classroom? Create a pie chart in your head in that structured classroom. How much time is spent in teacher talk, writing, social interaction around writing, and joy? And how much authentic writing behavior do you see taking place? The type of behavior that real writers use. You can't direct instruction your way to good writing or good writers. That doesn't mean we don't use direct instruction for teaching sub-skills, but if that's all you're doing, you are not going to develop writers who are able to write to their full writing potential. Now, go to a writer's workshop and I'll ask you the same question. Create that same pie chart and let me know what you see. What types of activities do you see taking place? So, conditions. There has to be some conditions for sharing. The students have to trust you if they are going to share, and this doesn't come automatically. They have to trust that you won't reject their idea, that you value what they have to say, and that you're not going to evaluate the idea. If they have this neat thing they're expressing and then you say, oh, but you forgot to indent the paragraphs, you're not evaluating the idea. Don't expect them to want to write. If they can't trust you with what is most precious to them, their thinking, their ideas, their experience. You have to create choice. Not all the time, but some of the time, not none of the time. Choice of what to write about, choice about writing form, and choice to throw things away if they're not working, to discard the things that grow cold. By the way, choice of form, the form that writing takes. Once you understand the process of writing, teaching the form is very easy. You can do a bunch of creative and silly writing and grasp the process of creating and shaping and revising ideas. And if you understand that process, it's easily transferred to more authentic, professional types of writing. So, finding writing topics, and that is the key. Once students know they're going to write every day, they start thinking when they're outside of class about what they're going to write. But if students are not used to writing or not used to having their own ideas, you can't expect them to magically turn on this writing motivation. It takes time to develop the ability to choose and to generate writing topics. So some strategies, some simple strategies. Ask questions, whether you're working individually or in large group. What's going on in your life? What are you thinking about? What do you want to tell someone? What's something you've noticed? What did you do yesterday? Sometimes, okay, get this idea. All right, get that down in paper. I want to hear about it. So ask them questions, and they want to tell you, and you say, okay, let's get that on paper so you can share with your friend. Keep a list in your journal or writing folder. Things you noticed, interesting, important events. So if they run out of ideas, they go to the front cover and they simply look at that list. And they keep adding to that list of interesting or important things they may want to write about. And ideas beget more ideas. I'm going to say that a couple of times. The brain automatically connects and makes associations. So when you hear an idea, you automatically think of related things. Generate a list of writing topics, all right? Keep a list of possible writing topics. Again, ideas always connect to other ideas. Brainstorming before a class begins. I tried this yesterday and it works pretty good. Ask the class to share what they want to write about and actually write the ideas on the board. And as they see ideas, the brain naturally connects and associates. Students get ideas. Brainstorming. Public posting. Keep a place in the classroom. It could be on a bulletin board. Have a marker and a pencil and keep a list of things to write about. Students can just write down some ideas and you'll have this list of writing topics or things to write about. I'm going to write about my football game. I'm going to write about the play I did. I'm going to write about going here or there. All right? Ideas beget more ideas. Make this public. Categories. This is a fun one. Can be done individually or, again, keep a public posting. Have some categories. And, again, they write ideas related to each one. And this is fun, and you can use some or all or none of these categories. Ideas beget more ideas. Public posting or in their own journal or writing folder. Prime the pump is when the teacher reads a short story or excerpt, and ideally this is one that the teacher has written him or herself. Teachers of writing must write. Then ask students, I'm going to read a story about, and I want you to keep track. What does it make you think about? Tell us what you're thinking. And afterwards you say, okay, what did that make you think about? Tell us about a time when you, or what do you want to tell us? Prime the pump. Brain walk. This is with older students. You take the brain out for a walk. You identify a thought or an image or a word, and you use the first word or phrase to capture the idea, and then you move on and you repeat until the page is full. For example, brain walk, someone gave me the name of balloon. The first thing I thought of was circus, and then when the circus came to Gransburg, and the fairground and fairs, and when the animal barn burned down and playing the carnival games. The first thing that popped in my mind, I wrote it down, and I got a page full of gravel, but out of this page full of gravel, there's about 3 or 4 real nuggets that I could pull out of here for my stories. That's a brain walk, and I would say starting in 2nd or 3rd grade, I would do this. Power write. This is a little different than the free write. Again, you start with your idea, and you write or draw the first word that pops in your mind, and you keep the pencil moving for 3 minutes or 2 and 1 minutes. And you write the first thing. You just keep writing. And if you don't know what to say, you just write pencil, pencil, pencil. And you create a pile of gravel. And again, there's always a couple of writing nuggets that appears. Here's my power write. My dog, Mickey, best dog ever. Everyone thinks their dog is cute. Is there an ugly dog? Had a neighbor who had a fat, furry potato. Sweet potato is not a potato. You get the idea. Out of this pile of garbage, I had some really great nuggets, and this was a 3-minute power write that I did. And, of course, reading. When I am writing professionally, I always start the day by reading an article or a book or something. Expository text, stories. It just gets the ideas flowing. And sometimes you have to write to see what it is that you want to say. And I tried this yesterday with my undergrads. Write for 5 minutes. If you have nothing to say, you say, I have nothing to say. But ideas always come. Sometimes you have to write to see exactly what it is that you have to say. Sometimes you do have to use teacher prompts, but the goal is to become prompt-free. Your goal is not to have to use them. They're temporary devices, kind of like those little skinny flat tires, temporary to get you to the gas station or wherever. They should be specific, universal, and open-ended that anyone can respond to. And again, there may be times and places, but keep it limited. It makes it harder for students to learn to write or develop their own writing topics. Writing is easy if you teach the process and if students are allowed to say what they want to say in a way they want to say it. And if they're able to choose the writing topics. Writing is easy. Get children to write from their experiences and expectations. That's called authentic writing, when they're writing about their ideas, their experiences, their expectations. What did you see? What do you think? What do you want to say about? That is inside them. And everyone has had experiences and ideas, and they can write about them. They can put these ideas and experiences into words on paper, and they can share them. That's called being a human being. And teaching writing is much easier and more efficient if students want to write. So you ask the questions, not how to motivate students, but how do we create the conditions whereby students want to write? What do students want to write? What do they want to say? How do they want to say it? How do they want to share? How do they want to respond to each other's writing? These are the questions we ask, and motivation will take care of itself. These are some internal writing prompts that come from within the students, and these are good. And when you come up with a teacher writing prompt, always test them on yourself. If you have trouble responding or writing about it, your students will. Unfinished sentences are sometimes used, especially with younger students. Write just enough to get them writing. Here are some ideas of unfinished sentences. And you get maybe a sentence or two about that, and that's fine. Writing more is not better. You should never or hardly ever say, oh, that's good, go back and add a little bit more detail. Why don't you add a little bit more when a student comes up to you? More words does not make writing better. And in our adult worlds, we are usually asked to make things concise and specific. When students have said what they want to say, ask them to say something else. When students say what needs to be said, they've said it. If students write the absolute minimum, help them find something else to say. Shorter writing is just fine. There are times when you can ask for a minimum number of sentences, and I do this quite a bit. All right, we're going to try to get 2 sentences in our journal today, or with my undergraduates, 6 sentences today. But rigor is different from complexity. And sometimes struggling writers can be overwhelmed by the thought of writing 1 paragraph. So to make writing easier, sometimes I'll say, oh, try to get 1 sentence out today, 1 sentence about. And of course, if you differentiate the number of sentences, you can differentiate in your class because you're going to have writers at varying abilities. All right, these are just some ideas about motivating students and getting them to write.